The Tennessee Titans saw the Houston Texans trade for Stefon Diggs on Wednesday, but L'Jarius Sneed owns Stefon Diggs. I am not impressed. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I am fired up for today's show. The Texans trade for Stefon Diggs, but L'Jarius Sneed owns Stefon Diggs, so who cares? Also, we got the details on L'Jarius Sneed's contract, and it is an absolute steal. And finally, no, the Titans should not trade down with the Buffalo Bills after the Stefon Diggs trade. I'll dive into all of that. Before I do, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube, and shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys, and if you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. But with that being said, again, the big news on Wednesday in the NFL is that the Houston Texans traded for Stefon Diggs. They traded a second-round pick in 2025. They got back Stefon Diggs and a fifth and a sixth next year. And, of course, the instant reaction from everyone around the NFL is how great of a deal this is for the Texans. The Texans do it again. What an all season. I mean, color me unimpressed. The Texans got better this year. I'm not saying that. And I'll also say this. The Texans are the best team in the AFC South on paper right now. If I had to make my predictions, I would tell you I think the Texans do win the division. So I'm not saying that the Texans aren't a good team or whatever, but I just don't understand the fanfare here. Number one, they added Danielle Hunter, who is a 30-year-old edge rusher that they paid a ton of money to when they had Jonathan Grenard already. And then they go out and trade for Stefon Diggs, who's going to be 31 years old by the time the season starts, has rapidly declined at the end of last year. Stefon Diggs had zero 100-yard games in the last 13 games of last year. Not only that, but he had a huge drop in yards per route run, yards per catch, yards per target, catch percentage. Not only all of that, but he is an absolute drama queen. Like, Stefon Diggs is on the sideline every single week screaming at Josh Allen, yelling at the coaches, throwing a fit, making a scene. You're going to say, so Stefon Diggs has been getting 150, 160 targets every year for 4 years, and you're going to put him on an offense with Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins and Tank Dell? What do you think that Stefon Diggs is going to do when C.J. Stroud throws the ball more to the better player in Nico Collins? Nico Collins is a better player than 31-year-old Stefon Diggs. So what is Diggs going to do when he's not getting the rock 160 times a year? He was already throwing fits when he was getting it 160 times a year, going to the playoffs, winning playoff games, making deep postseason runs. So you're telling me he was unhappy in that scenario, and he's going to go to the Texans with a second-year quarterback, with players who should get the ball more than him, with a team who's not guaranteed to win as many playoff games or make deep runs all the time, and he's going to be happy? So, to me, this trade for Stefon Diggs is more like the Titans trade for Julio Jones than it is anything else. You're not getting Stefon Diggs in his prime. Stefon Diggs, statistically, is on the decline. And the history is out there of wide receivers once they hit 31. It would be one thing for the Texans to sign a Stefon Diggs to $20 million a year or whatever. It would be one thing to do that. But to trade a second-round pick to do it? So the Texans' two big additions this year are two players who are on the decline and towards the end of their career. And I'm supposed to freak out and say that they're Super Bowl contenders now? Not a chance. And not only that, but L'Jarius Sneed literally owns Stefon Diggs. He owns him. In the last 5 games that Stefon Diggs has played against L'Jarius Sneed, when L'Jarius Sneed is matched up against Stefon Diggs, he is 3 for 10, 3 catches out of 10 targets with 37 yards and 0 touchdowns. Last year, in their regular season game, Josh Allen targeted Stefon Diggs 5 times when L'Jarius Sneed was on him. 0 catches. I'll say it in English. 0 catches. 0 yards. 0 touchdowns. So what am I worried about here? The Titans just bolstered their cornerback group. They now have L'Jarius Sneed, who owns Stefon Diggs. Cheeto, with ton of experience going against Stefon Diggs. And Roger McCreary, who's one of the top 5 slot cornerbacks in the NFL. Top 10 at minimum. And everybody's like, oh, well, you put Sneed on Diggs. What about Nico? Well, last year against Roger McCreary, who is significantly smaller and not an outside corner, but against Nico Collins, Nico had 1 catch for -2 yards. Okay, look, again, the Texans are good. They're the best team on paper in the AFC South. They're the favorites to win the division. CJ Stroud, very good player. But again, we have seen this movie before. After Trevor Lawrence's second season, the Jags were the crown jewel of the NFL. Did you see that comeback in the playoffs? Did you see them go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs? Trevor Lawrence is going to be MVP. The Jags are going to run the division for years. But we heard it all. I have seen this movie before. And I think that CJ Stroud is a better player than Trevor Lawrence. But, what are we doing here? I got people online telling me that CJ Stroud is better than Josh Allen, that CJ Stroud is the second best quarterback in the league. What are we doing here? What is going on? So again, I think the Texans are a good team. I think they probably win the division. I think CJ Stroud is a very good player. I loved CJ Stroud coming out of the draft, was my QB1, far and away, far above everybody else. So I'm not trying to hate here, but at the same time, this hype train for the Texans all season and what they've done, I am just not on board. I just do not get it. And I think it's outrageous at the end of the day. And especially when you talk about a player who, again, 31 years old, owned by L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, Stefon Diggs is L'Jarius Sneed's son, for real. So I'm just having a hard time understanding this national media freak out about the Houston Texans. Even if I think they're a good team, I don't think that they've done some crazy thing to get better. Azeez Al-Shaair is a replacement level linebacker. Danico Autry got $20 million, and he's 34. I love Nico, but what? So your big additions are giving Azeez Al-Shaair the most guaranteed money of any linebacker when he is an average run-of-the-mill replacement level linebacker, giving a 34-year-old Danico Autry $20 million until he's 36 years old, trading for a 31-year-old declining Stefon Diggs, giving up a second-round pick, and then signing a 30-year-old edge rusher. That is the best all season in the NFL? Like Delaney Walker once said, crown him if you want to crown him. Still got to play football. So with that being said, I'm going to move forward here. We got the final details on L'Jarius Sneed's contract. And of course, it's an even better deal than we first expected. I'll show you guys the details. Before we get into that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim is of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. I warned you guys at the beginning, I am fired up for today's show. We talked about why the Texans trade for Stefon Diggs does not move me and how L'Jarius Sneed literally owns Stefon Diggs. Now I want to get into L'Jarius Sneed's contract because we had some of the numbers. We had 4 years, $76 million, $19 million average. We had $55 million guaranteed, which, like I've been saying, the details that get reported are never the details that are real. So we're going to dive into the real details of L'Jarius Sneed's contract and look at where the Titans are at from a cap space perspective. And if you've been listening to the Locked On Titans podcast every day, you would already know exactly where their cap space is before the official details of this deal came out because your boy told you what they were. But we're going to get into all of that. Before we do, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Tomorrow, probably going to do a mailbag episode. Feel like after free agency now, I kind of need to take your guys' questions and see how you're feeling there. And then next week, we're going to start the Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Series. I got some great Joe Alt stuff coming up as well. Very excited to dive into all of that. But L'Jarius Sneed's contract, of course, the details that we got about the average and everything, it is 4 years, $76 million. So that's an average of $19 million, which, as I told you guys before, is only the 6th highest paid contract for cornerbacks in the NFL. So it's the 6th highest average pay. What a deal for L'Jarius Sneed, who is a top 3 cornerback in the NFL, maybe top 1. I would hear top 1. I do like Sauce Gardner quite a bit, though. Patrick Surtain Jr., very good. Anyway, that's a conversation for a different day, but L'Jarius Sneed is up there, and clearly the Titans are getting a bargain here. Then you go to the guaranteed money, and all we heard was $55 million guaranteed. $55 million guaranteed. Well, folks, of course, that is not the truth. The truth of the matter is L'Jarius Sneed had $44 million guaranteed. So basically, if you want to look at it, this is a 2-year, $44 million deal. The Titans can have L'Jarius Sneed for 2 years, and then if it doesn't work out, they can cut him with $12 million in dead cap. And I know $12 million in dead cap sounds like a lot, but the NFL salary cap right now is $255 million. In 2 years, it's going to be $270. In 2 years, it's going to be $265, whatever. So $12 million to $270 or $265, percentage-wise, that's not that much. I've been talking about this as we've gone through the contract details of all of the Titans' big free agent signings, saying, hey, some of these deals are going to work out, and the Titans are going to keep these players more than just 2 years. But some of them probably won't, and they'll only be on the team for 2 years. So it's not like all of the dead cap hits that we've talked about are all going to come on 2026 and be there. Some of them may, some of them might not. You know what I'm saying? Like, not every signing that the Titans have is going to be a bust. Some of them are going to work. Hopefully all of them work. But reality is probably 1 or 2 of these big signings, Pollard, Cushenberry, Sneed, Ridley, one of those is probably not going to work out as well as we hope. That's just the reality of life. But maybe they all hit. But if not, I'm just saying the Titans are not going to be in a bad spot in 2026 if some of these deals don't work out, because the Titans have positioned things very smartly where they put a ton of money into next year. Like Calvin Ridley, $28 million cap hit in 2025. L'Jarius Sneed, $24 million cap hit in 2025. The Titans know that they don't have anybody to pay anytime soon. So if they pay big time money on the salary cap for those couple of players in 2025, they can afford to do that. I mean, right now the Titans are set to have like $100 million in cap space next year. Now that won't be the case by the time we get there, which we learned this year and figured obviously, but just saying the Titans are going to have a ton of cap room next year even with these big deals that they're going to have when the cap hits jump up. L'Jarius Sneed's cap hit is $9 million this year. That is 17th among cornerbacks in the NFL. So third in cash, sixth in average, fourth in guaranteed, 17th in cap hit. Again, the more details that we get and when reality starts to come out, it is obvious that this contract is a major, major steal for the Titans. For the Titans to only have to pay this kind of money when you have cornerbacks making a ton more in guaranteed cash, and for the Titans to have only given up a third-round pick in 2025 and then the seventh-round swap this year, whatever, that's nothing. I mean, an absolute masterclass by Rand Carthon. And the more we know, the more it is confirmed how great of a move this was for the Titans. And throw this in, now that the Texans have traded for Stefon Diggs, trade looks even better for the Titans. They needed this. So absolutely love the deal, love the contract for L'Jarius Sneed. As for where the Titans are at cap space-wise right now, again, a couple of weeks ago, when we did the draft, free agency, or trade, or draft, free agency, or both, is what it was. When we played draft, free agency, or both, at the end of the show, I went over how much cap space the Titans actually have remaining. And I told you, right now, if you go on these websites like SpotTrack.com, and of course, SpotTrack.com, that's where I got the L'Jarius Sneed contract information. So shout out to that website. Great stuff over there. If you go to SpotTrack.com, if you go to OverTheCap.com, these cap management websites for the NFL, you would think the Titans had $50 million in cap. And all of your friends who don't listen to the show and aren't as informed as you are, they're telling you the Titans got $50 million in cap space. They should be going out and doing this and going out and doing that and blah, 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 and this and that. And I told you, yes, it looks like they have $50 million in cap space. But we had unconfirmed details on Kenneth Murray, Jack Gibbons, Nick Folk, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Sadiq Charles. There were smaller moves that we didn't have the details on yet, and I said that would probably be about $10 to $12 million of cap space right there. So chunk that off, and that gets you to 40, 38 right in there. And I said L'Jarius Sneed. We don't have the cap hit details, but that's probably going to be $10 to $12 million on the cap, maybe 14 at the max if the Titans front load it, but that's going to drop you from 38-40 down to 28-20 or 28-30, somewhere in there, $30 million in cap space. And then you add on the $7.5 million that represents the Titans rookies. And in reality, the Titans had 22, 23, $24 million in cap space, which is nowhere near the $50 million that your uninformed friends who clicked on Spot Track told you that they had. So I tried to tell everybody where they were at, and now that we have all these details, we have L'Jarius Sneed as a $10 million cap hit. We have the details on Folk and Charles and these auxiliary guys that the Titans signed, and we know about the rookies. Well, now the Titans have 22, 23, $24 million in cap space. There's a little bit of $1 million to $1 million window, depending on the site that you go to, because they do calculate things a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, I told you, and it is proven out here now, that the Titans have about $22 to $24 million in cap space to actually work with. They're going to want to carry over some of that cap space into the regular season so that they can sign guys, they get cut after training camp, so that they can make moves during the year when injuries happen and they can add to the roster and all of that. So if we're honest, effective cap space that the Titans can actually use, it's realistically probably $7 million, $10 million at maximum. So you look at a guy like Justin Simmons, you look at some interior defensive line options, you look at some linebackers that are still available in free agency, places, maybe offensive tackles, which we have talked about. You look at those situations and the Titans just simply don't have as much money as maybe some people think that they do. So maybe one or two more veteran additions probably going to come after the draft, but we're getting down to, hey, the Titans need to hit in the draft to fill some of these spots. But with that being said, speaking of the draft, some of you want to see the Titans trade down, and now some people are saying the Titans should trade down with the Buffalo Bills because they need to jump up and get a wide receiver. But the Titans can't give great players to other teams. I'm going to explain the trade details that I've seen and why I think it's insane for the Titans to do it. Before I get into that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. Number one, they have the best features. I mean, it's number one, it's number 5, it's number 10, it's every answer. They have the best features on Game Time. You get last-minute deals on tickets with their zone deals and their flash deals. You get a best price guarantee with their Game Time guarantee, where they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same row and same section for cheaper. They also have a way where you can actually see what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. They have a view from your seat, panoramic view for you to see. Love that. And the best part is they have all-in prices. You guys know how those surprise fees hit you at checkout. You're not going to have that issue on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Also want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the Stefon Diggs deal and why I'm not moved. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed's contract and how it's even more of a steal than we thought. Now I want to talk about the idea that the Titans should trade down with the Buffalo Bills to help them come up and get a wide receiver. Before I get into it, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Tomorrow will be a mailbag episode. Hit me up on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Let me know your question. Also, next week, Locked On Titans NFL Draft Preview Series begins. I think I'm going to start off with the offensive tackles because I have a lot to say about the offensive tackles. But got to cap off today's show, and this idea that the Titans need to trade down in the first round has perplexed me, frustrated me, angered me at times, and it's only getting dumber. Like, the ideas are only getting dumber as we get closer to the NFL draft. So I've already said, I don't want the Titans to trade down. And here is why. Pretty simple. The Titans need top-tier talent. The Titans need blue-chip players. The Titans need top 10 players at their position in the NFL. Look around. All right, look at the Chiefs. Mahomes, Kelsey, Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, maybe Trent McDuffie as well. The Chiefs have 5 to 8 players who are in the top 5. I mean, Mahomes is number 1. Kelsey's number 1. Chris Jones is number 1. Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey, probably top 10 at their position. Maybe even higher for Creed Humphrey. He might be top 5. Chris Jones, top 5. L'Jarius Sneed, top 5. Trent McDuffie, top 10, top 15 at max. What wins in professional sports is elite high-level players, and especially in the NFL. Do you guys know the term JAG? A JAG. J-A-G. Not the Jaguars. JAG. That has been a term in the NFL for decades. Since before I was even born, the term JAG was used in the NFL. And do you know what it stands for? Just another guy. 75%, maybe 80% of the NFL is just another guy. Replacement level. Look at a guy like Azeez. Azeez Al-Shaair is a perfect example. He was a backup linebacker in San Francisco. He was an average linebacker for the Titans. You could change out Azeez Al-Shaair with 20 other middle linebackers in the NFL, and it would be just the same. David Long, Azeez, None of these guys are difference makers. They're just average replacement level players or average starters. Most of the NFL's, like, if you took the middle 50% of every NFL roster and you just switched them around, the teams would probably finish in the same exact places because the best players are what makes a difference. The Tennessee Titans need depth, but you know what they need more? High-level players. The Titans need top 10 players at their position. And yes, you can hit on draft picks in the mid-rounds. Yes, that is absolutely possible. But the reality is, and especially when you're talking offensive line, the better players are drafted earlier in the draft. Like, look at quarterback. Look at wide receiver. Look at offensive line, folks. Look at offensive tackle specifically. The better players are typically found early in the draft, especially at offensive tackle. So I saw a trade proposal where the Titans trade back all the way to 28 for pick 60, pick 128, and a first rounder in 2025 and a fourth rounder in 2025 from Buffalo. It's basically a similar trade to what the Falcons made with the Browns to trade up for Julio Jones. This would be an outright disaster. Number one, the Titans cannot afford to go back to 28. There are not 32 first-round talents in the draft. There never is. Never does any scout have 32 first-round grades on players. The Titans cannot afford to trade back that far and miss on Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, hell, even Brock Bowers, even Olu Fashanu, J.C. Latham. I'll even put him in there. Like, I will not be happy if the Titans trade back to 11, 12, 13. I think that's a mistake. I think you take Joe Alt, you take Malik Neighbors, you take Rome Odunze, and you ride into the sun. But if the Titans miss on all of those players I just mentioned to trade back to number 28 to take what? Kingsley Suamatai or Tyler Guyton? Like, for what? For what? Pick 60? A first-round pick next year? The Bills are going to make the playoffs next year. And at minimum, they're going to be 10-7, 9-8. It's not going to be a good draft pick. It's going to be another draft pick where you don't get a first-round talent. It's going to be another draft pick where you're at 17, 18, 19, 20 or later. And now you're trading a Joe Alt, a Malik Neighbors, a Rome Odunze. For what? For two Bs? For two 20 or later picks? It makes zero sense. I say it in Spanish, cero. It makes zero sense. Insanity is what it is. The Titans can absolutely not trade back that far. That is absurd to even contemplate it. And again, as we get closer to the draft and people start to get bored, things get even more wacky. I just finished watching my Joe Alt film review stuff, diving into all his tape, passing on that guy to have pick 22 in next year's draft and pick 22 in this year's draft is insane. Think if the Bills do the same thing next year. So you would rather have pick 28 this year and pick 28 next year than Joe Alt? Again, top tier players, top 10, top 5 players. That's what wins in the NFL, not depth. You can change the depth on basically, you could give the Chiefs the Bengals depth guys, or you could give the Bengals the Eagles depth guys, or you could, and it wouldn't change a freaking thing because the high level players are what makes a difference. And the Titans need high level players like Malik Neighbors, like Joe Alt, way more than they need depth players. So asinine, insane, get it out of here. The Titans cannot make that trade with the Buffalo Bills. But with that being said, I was fired up today, folks. I wasn't lying to you. I was not lying. Mailbag tomorrow. That is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland. This is Locked On Titans.